Trying to get it recorded here. Hi.
Hi there.
Oh, this is amazing to be inside that.
Come on up.
Like this.
We'll get you all to come right up here.
They're waiting. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't know.
You can either climb right in there or you can sit right on the beam, or I'll tell you about our aircraft. I don't know if you know, but this is a Lancaster heavy bomber from World War II. Okay? It was produced in 1942 right here in Canada. It flew to Europe. It didn't actually see combat. The war ended and it came back to Canada, served in the Air Force for 20 years before it was put on a pedestal as a monument in about 1962 right here at the Calgary Airport. And then about 30 years ago, 20 years ago, the city gave it to the museum, and we've since fixed it up. We've given it a new coat of paint, we've cleaned out the inside, cleaned out all the garbage, made it look like it did 80 years ago. Well, maybe not brand new, but very nice part of our museum. So this plane carried 7 people. You can see right here is where the pilot sat. One interesting thing about British bombers, you know when you watch a war movie on TV, there's always 2 pilots?
Yeah.
British bombers only had 1 pilot. And that's because there was a shortage of pilots during the war. So there'd be 1 pilot, and beside him would sit the flight engineer. And he could help the pilot, but he basically monitored the engines. And if the pilot got hurt, he might be able to try and fly the plane. But at this table sat the navigator and the radio operator. And then in the very front, you can see down in the nose there, that's where the bomb aimer and turret gunner sat. That was 1 person. So he was the machine gunner, the nose turret gunner. But when they got near the target, he was the person who guided the aircraft to the point where they released the bombs, and he actually released the bombs over the target.
Yeah.
And then he'd go back to being the front turret gunner again.
Right.
So that was 5 people up front here. They all got into the aircraft, like in the nose section there. If you looked up from underneath, there was a hole. That's where they got in, and if your plane's getting shot down, that's where you get out. You just jump out of that hole in the middle of the night into the blackness. Not a fun thing. Right behind you on the ceiling is where there'd be the mid-upper gunner. There'd be a cradle there. He'd sit in a cradle. There'd be machine guns on top of the aircraft, and he would use those to protect the aircraft. And you can see right at the back is the tail gunner position. So that person sat back there by himself for 7 to 10 hours, depending on the flight. It's minus 30. It's not pressurized, so they're wearing these big winter suits that they actually were electrical, so they would plug them in to try and keep warm. They were still very cold, but they had to sit in those seats for the entire trip. It's dark because they're flying at night. These bombers primarily flew at nighttime to prevent from being spotted from enemy aircraft. So it was not a very nice place to be. If your plane was in trouble, being shot at from another fighter or ground fire, maybe it caught on fire and everyone had to evacuate. Again, it's dark. You're stumbling over this wall to try and get out, or out the escape hatch out the front there. It's a very dangerous place. As a matter of fact, 40,000 Canadians flew in what's called Bomber Command. That was the group that flew bombers like this. 10,000 of them never came home. So 25% of all the Canadians who served just in bombers, died. And in the British Air Force, it was even worse. It was closer to 50%.
Wow.
So, does anyone have any questions before we let the next group in?
No? Yeah. Thank you again.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this.
Yes. Amazing.
Pretty
Thank
neat
you.
to go into something like this. So.
Yeah.
For sure.
It is.
For sure.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the museum.